Okay. Wow, 22 frames a second. That sucks. Hello, people. Drop a comment in the comment section and say hello by all means. I need to know. I want to know who's here. Ah. Yeah, that ain't right. Hello. I seem to be having an issue with my internet. Oh, God, my back. Hello, Reese. How are you? Why is my internet Sucksville, I wonder? I don't know what's going on. I've got 1 frame per second, which really sucks. $19, $21. Okay, it's recovered. I just want to make sure everything's fine before we start getting into the meat and potatoes of this thing, because I don't want to be, you know. Oh, that stinks. Reese, could you tell me, are you receiving this stream loud and clear, or am I breaking up? Or, you know, I don't know. My speed test is playing silly buggers. My upload speed's really good. My download speed is 0.75 megabytes per second, which just smells really bad. It's not too bad. Oh, I don't like the sound of that. Right, what can I do? I don't think I can do anything. Just hope that it gets better, really. Oh, that is terrible. Okay, look, pour a beer. Don't worry about it. I guess this is where I'm at this point in time. Right. Let that froth just deal with itself. Okay. Yep. All right. Sweet. Look, I'm not going to worry about it. Facebook Live isn't great. I've got to have a look at maybe another camera. Maybe I don't know. It serves our purposes for the time being. Serves our purposes for the time being. How many people have we got? We've got 3 people at the moment. I am early. This is the half hour before we get into the live stream. So yeah, we're just relaxing here. Gives everyone a chance to warm up. Put in any questions that they have. Who's down south? Is how's trade? Because of the new restrictions. Anyone shed some light on that for me? If you have just joined the stream, drop a comment in the comment section, guys, and let me know who you are and that you're here. I need something to wipe that with. All good in South Australia. That's good to hear, Mark. Very good to hear. How's our business? Is it still up, or has it sort of plateaued out for you guys a little bit at the moment? All right, Angie, thank you very much for joining. That's good to hear, mate. It's good to hear. I'd really like to see the freshwater aquascaping scene take off. More so than it has. There's an untapped market there. Just thinking of all the things that you've got to sell. I mean, you've got coral for marine systems, but you've got tissue culture plants, you've got Anubias on driftwood, you've got all these little things and bits and pieces that you guys can do in store with grafting onto rock and stuff like that. I saw some really cool stuff. It's all bald spot, Kevin. It's all bald. I'm going bald on my terms. Alright? So it was time for it to come off, and it's actually starting to grow on the missus. She's actually starting to like it, so yeah, I actually like it. It's a bit fresh in the morning, but it definitely wakes you up. Oh, nice work. You'll be happy to know, Kevin, that I have actually been doing over 12,000 steps a day since I've been on parental leave with my daughter Vera. So this is the end of the 4th week or end of the 5th week, I think. End of the 4th week. I've got 6 weeks left, I think. Yeah, so it's been it's been good. No, the lack of hair, the style of which is, you know, straight off, she's starting to get used to it. Hey Andy, how you going, man? So where was I? Oh yes, aquascaping. So yeah, a huge you know, opportunity for the freshwater scene to reinvigorate itself. I think you've got I saw some cool stuff being done. People were doing stuff for fighter tanks when they were getting marine pure balls and like the live rock pieces and the cubes and stuff, and planting little Anubias and stuff on them, or, you know, things like that, selling it to the customer, and that way every time they cleaned out the fighter bowl, because everyone likes to completely annihilate every single bit of biology in the system by washing everything with tap water. You just say, take this ball and this plant out, put it in with your fish with a little bit of the water, wash everything off, and then put it back in, and that way they've always know that they've got a really high surface area amount of biological filtration there, and they've got a plant, which, you know, your value added for a fighter sale, which it doesn't take much, to value add that for a fighting fish sale. And you guarantee long-term success for the customer. Yeah, it's good. A lot of opportunity there for you guys for aquascaping. I think it's, be interesting to see where it goes. No, I have a Fitbit. Kev, so I got a Fitbit. Yesterday, Vera was being a little teeny tiny bit difficult. Walked down, she slept down to, I walk Will to school, and then I go down and get a coffee, obviously, because coffee is life. And then I walked down to my mother's place down near the river, and she woke up there and wouldn't go back to sleep, and didn't go back to sleep until I got back home after I'd done like 5 laps of the estate. By the time I got home, I'd done like 14,800 steps. I was feeling good, but yeah, she induces exercise. It's good. Oh, that's awesome, Kev. If you're going to be helping the RAA and the PRAA to get things up to speed, that's great. I'd really like to have some correspondence with you in regards to what you think. As you know, I'm a pretty straight shooter. I don't mince words. I don't muck around. So if something needs to be done, it's let's get it done. We're lagging behind the times big time here in Australia. It's just that's just the fact of the matter. We can do so much better. You look at the caliber of aquarium stores in the US, Germany, Japan. Like, if anyone wants an eye opener on what an aquarium store actually can be like, go to a bad shop in Japan, and you'll see just how far behind the 8 ball we are. There's the boutique aquarium is a lot. The concept of the boutique aquarium is alive and well and needs to be capitalised on, in my opinion. Hey Shane, how you going? How's things, man? Good to see you on the stream. What beverage is everyone hooking into tonight? How you going? Good to see you. How's this clownfish going, man? Hope good. Yeah, Kev, I agree. There are some good stores in Australia. There are some good stores in Australia that have been well put together, well thought out. The layout is, really, really good. I have to say, the one that I will name, and it deserves recognition, is Eric from Arc Aquariums, what was Reefer for Reptile. The new store that Eric and his wife put together, right from day one, was really groundbreaking. They did their homework. They wanted a large store with a big draw appeal, but they also wanted to keep that uniqueness about their shop. I believe, from looking from the outside in anyway. And the evolution of that store, the last time I was there, from when I first started dropping in, when I used to visit from time to up until the last time that I dropped in, which I believe was after reef stock, or somewhere around then. It had become even better. Yeah, so I know that they had a setback because of that fire, but I'm sure that they applied their paintbrush to that again, and it will be even better once it's finished, if it's not already finished. I admit I haven't been keeping up with that. But yeah, props to Eric and the team at Aquariums. They're good quality stock. They know what they're talking about. They are challenging the mould of what an aquarium store is and can be. They're really pushing boundaries, which is good. And they've got a fantastic store and a fantastic staff. Great marketing. Look, guys, I haven't talked to Eric in ages. I have a lot of respect for the guy. And Michelle as well. And look, if anyone's wants some ideas on how to go with either opening a new aquarium store or reinvigorating their old aquarium store through investing a little bit more money into it, I would say go and talk to Eric and Michelle. Yeah, they're great people, and they know their shit, obviously. Because they have built something truly special at what was Reef of the Reptile at Hornsby there. So yeah. 15-year-old Bundy Spice and pineapple juice. Well, yeah, wowzers. Spiced rum. Nice. Okay. I have to admit, I have been taking the odd snifter of rum lately, expanding my my repertoire of the spirits that I like to drink, and there's a few that I've found that I like, so yeah, it's good. Hey, David, how you going, man? Reese, happy birthday, dude. Cheers. Double shot bourbons. What's your poison? What bourbon do you drink? I'm a bourbon man myself. What happened to my hair, David? Funny story. I shaved it off. I wanted to change, and I really like it. And a lot of people have complimented that it suits me. I needed to change. It's kind of reinvigorated me a little bit. It's been good. Oh, Angie, I feel your pain. Pepsi Max as well. Ugh. I mean, working the weekend's one thing, but why would you drink that? Ugh. Ugh. Damn. Yeah, well, it was shorter, Matt, my hair. It's grown out over the last couple of weeks. I have been threatening to take the razor to it, and Gemma has been backhanding me when I'm in range when I say that. But baby steps. She's just getting used to it being this short. So, as I said, I'm going, as you can see, like, it's low tide here, dude. It's real low tide here. So I'm on my way out. And as I said, if I'm going bald on my terms. So, sorry about the cough. I've got a tickle in my throat that I've had for the last few days, and it's just really annoying. It's not Rona, right? Don't panic. Not that you can get it by watching a live stream, but it's not coronavirus, all right? So just calm your farms. Bloody coronavirus. Ugh. If people would just stay indoors and wear a bloody mask, we wouldn't be as bad off as we are. Anyway. You're a Shivers drinker. Okay, so you're a whiskey fan. All right. Okay. But yeah, no. Why would you? You must be hard up for drinks if you drink at Woodstocks, man. That's that's crook. That's real bad. But yeah, look, I started on Jim Beam, then moved to Jack Daniels, and then a few other things. Exactly, you've got the idea, Kev. Yep, spot on, man. Let's just call the live stream there. That's just wrapped up in a nutshell. Guys, if we are experiencing problems with the stream, please let me know. I've got some pretty good upload speed here, but I don't know. Let me check it out. I'll be back in a sec. Oh. Alright, so yeah, I don't know what's going on. But we haven't got a lot of choice, so we'll just we'll just deal with it. See where it goes. The young fella will be going to bed soon anyway, so that'll be alright. How badly is it cutting out? Is probably the question that I would ask. We got like fibre to the house, so see what happens. Sam Booker shots. Jesus, Andy. Maybe ask you questions now while you can still see the keyboard. Yeah, no, my upload speed's good. It's testing good here, so you know, we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens. So I thought we would. I can probably. I'm gonna get off that and see if that improves it. Okay, so my internet connection was restored. What the hell? I have got no idea what's going on. just come up with my internet connection was restored. I had my phone plugged into my computer. Maybe that was the reason. Now it's down to 2 frames a second again. What the hell is going on here? Oh, the joys of the internet. Well, it's definitely a lot faster. Much faster. Whoa. Okay. So maybe we're in the clear now. Maybe it was somehow operating off my phone 4G. Oh yeah, heaps better. Okay, guys. I don't think we'll experience any more problems here. I think it was because my phone was plugged into charge on my computer. Yeah, and now it's back on. It's actually back on my home router. So yeah, let me know if there's any more problems. We should be solved now though. We'll see what happens. Okay, so I'll just go over a few things that we've got just in case anyone here currently is planning on asking some of these things. Can you overdo it with ceramic media? Andy asks. And then there's a whole thread there which I'll go through. David asks, how much is too much? I'm thinking I was streaming on 4G. I'm thinking that's what the problem was, Kev. Yeah, how much is too much biological media, which is an excellent question. So that's we're gonna dive into that. Reese asked a brilliant question. Is there an upper limit to system turnover? Can we have too much turnover? And then he goes into his system specs, which I'll go into. And that is an excellent question. And I think an answer that some people are going to find very, very, very interesting. So, Andy asked about wet or dry skimming, which we'll cover in the fractionator or the protein skimmer stream, which I'm thinking will probably be up next after this stream at a later date. But after I let him know that, he said dry rock opinions on how long it takes to become live, and does too much coralline on the rock affect its ability to be used as biomedia, as coralline blocks the pores? Also a very good question. It's it's getting us thinking. It's good stuff here. And then sponges as filtration and so forth. And I don't have a lot of experience with that, but I will offer my limited knowledge on that as best I can. Matt Bates then asked, what are the benefits, effects of different types of media, e.g. bioballs, K1, etc., types of flow through the different media and the effects from that, and how to potentially use or manipulate it to benefit your system. Excellent question. Already part of the basic information that I was going to go over. So that was fantastic. A way to remove finer particles from water columns. What's on the market for different size microns and the effects for removing finer particles. Again, already on the cards. So apart from that, then I'll just go through types of mechanical filtration, what we aim for with mechanical filtration, what our targets are, what are the pros and cons of different mechanical filtration, why some are better than others, the micron sizes that we range for, the micron sizes that will physically be removed by those filtration devices or techniques. Then the flow-on effects that has for biological filtration, what sort of biological filters we can apply in our aquatic systems and so forth. So I haven't got in here to cut, Paul. This is the problem. Not anymore, anyway. How are you, sir? Has the week been good? I hope the week's been good for you and business continues to get better. Bloody dripping. We're dripping here. Right. Oh, Friday night. Gotta love Friday night. Everyone loves Friday night. Does anyone have any questions that they would like to add to the questions that people have already asked me? No worries. I will refrain from touching my laptop. Alright, so we've got 5 minutes until we kick this pig into overdrive. Does everyone have their snacks and beverages? Are they locked and loaded? If you guys have groups that you are a member of that you think they might be interested in viewing this live stream, by all means, send out the invite. You can even just copy the link to the live stream and send that to them. And by all means, get them to come along. So yeah. All right. Well, look, Reese is giving me a kick up the arse. So look, let's start with the questions that I've been asked initially. Anyway, I think that's a good place to start, as we do always. I like to give preference to the people who took the time to ask questions. To ask questions and get involved prior to the stream. So we'll go there first. So Andy asked, can you overdo it with ceramic media like marine pure, etc.? And this has got to do with he was reducing nutrients too much, and he was getting dinoflagellates. So, and we'll go over a couple of the aspects of his system as well. Andy, that's a fantastic question, and I will get to that. That's a really good question. Yeah, we'll get to that. And Kev, I will also answer that question. Tim, you magnificent bastard, what are you doing? How are you, man? Okay, so first of all, ceramic media like marine pure, etc. Let's just put to bed the aluminium fallacy here. If there is, subpar media that's coming out that it can be proven through ICP tests that aluminium is being leached into RO water or whatever like that, you know what, that's fantastic, but there's that many tanks out there with marine pure in them. If it was and other sorts of ceramic-based media using aluminosilicate materials like zeolites and different clays and different things like this, kaolin, rhyolite, all this kind of stuff. If it was a problem, it would be well and truly present by now on a much larger scale. The fact that it happened to one guy and, it was just, he thought that was the issue and he drew a correlation between the two, and then everyone got on the bandwagon. If it was actually a problem before then, you would have been hearing about it. So let's just put that to bed before we go any further. Reduction of nutrient, nitrate and phosphate in particular is an issue for dinoflagellates if you remove too much. So if you get to essentially an ultra-low nutrient system, dinoflagellates can become a problem. I'm not an expert in it. This is just the research that I've read. So there is a balance here between nutrient removal and nutrient levels within your system to support photosynthesis in your coral. Okay? Too much, you'll get browning out. Too little, and you'll get dinoflagellates, you'll get cyanobacteria, you'll get all other sorts of stuff happening and going on here. So yeah, it's a problem, I've dealt with a couple of commercial applications with this, with coral propagation facilities and things like that are experiencing these issues, and essentially they just started to remove mold from the system, remove waste deposits, and then start to remove some media to help to counteract and circumvent the removal of nitrate and phosphate potentially from the system, to help rebalance the nutrient profile within the water. It's not exactly a hard thing to do. You could also feed more, but then obviously, you've got the thing that you also need more biological filtration to do that. And that goes hand in hand. I mean, for removal of nitrate, you need area for denitrification to occur in areas with low or no oxygen. So yeah, it's nuanced. You need to be careful on how you approach this sort of stuff, and make sure you understand the processes behind it before you go jumping in and making too many changes. Big changes all of a sudden are not good, so you just need to be aware of that. So Andy then goes into that the nutrient removal and the filtration that he has on the system. He has a filter roller. That's good. Mechanical filtration is good. Removing, the crap from the water before it can break down is good. There's nothing wrong with that. But then he's got a 8x4 marine pure block, 2 kilos of live rock, a Brightwell brick, as well as the marine pure block, which arguably would probably be big enough for his system to start anyway. And then he's got Miracle Mud in takeaway containers. Okay, so obviously there we've got a lot of surface area that is allowing denitrifying bacteria, and this is anaerobic denitrifying bacteria, to proliferate to remove nitrate. And any of that cellular structure is then going to also incorporate some phosphate into its cell structure. Not as much as an aerobic nitrate and phosphate removal, such as biopellets or organic carbon dosing that you've been stripping out with your skimmer, but it is going to remove some. Phosphorus is a nutrient requirement for all heterotrophic organisms. Okay, organisms in general. Let's just say. So Andy's phosphate is between 0.03 and 0.05, and nitrate between 2 and 5. Now, I would argue that those levels probably wouldn't be indicative of a dinoflagellate bloom, but he says that they'll both drop if he lets them. And then he comments that his display was all dry rock and sand. That doesn't really matter. The biology is going to develop in the dry rock itself. Dry rock, I don't think, has any bearing on whether or not you have excessive nitrate removal. Essentially, it's just removing the prevalence of hitchhikers and pests to proliferate by incorporating them into your system with live rock rather than using dry rock. It also allows you to make sure that your rock in general isn't loaded with phosphate, because phosphate attaches itself to calcium carbonate, and live rock and sand is made up of calcium carbonate. So yeah, it's a problem. It's called phosphate loading, or what I term phosphate loading. So let me just read, get rid of all that. He comments that there's a little bit of an epidemic since everyone is using dry rock and sand. I don't think that is the cause. I don't think that that's an accurate correlation that we can make. The addition of dry rock and dry sand would arguably work against a lower nitrate and phosphate level compared to live rock in a system of equivalent in two systems of equivalent ages. And once they're established, it's all got to do with the amount of food you put in and the amount of organic carbon present to fuel denitrification and phosphate removal from the system. Dry rock and dry sand starting up a system like that has, I would argue, absolutely no effect on the prevalence of dinoflagellates. I would be more putting it towards the fact that everyone is monitoring and trying to control their nutrient levels much more aggressively these days, and therefore the prevalence of dinoflagellates is increased because people are being more careful with how they control their nutrient levels. Essentially, don't go throwing, keep it simple. Don't go throwing everything at it to try and, address certain issues as they pop up. Adjust your maintenance program and your additions to your system based on what you have in there. And if it is deemed that you do need other filtration in order to catch up to a point with certain problems that you might be having, then address it then. It's sticking band-aids on band-aids is not helping. So yeah, you've got like half a refugium there. You've got live rock, which arguably isn't the best biological filtration media. Yes, it'll create a cryptic zone, but what do you want that for? You haven't really got a refugium, so you don't really need that. Then you've got marine pure, the blocks, so you have orders of magnitude high surface area in just one of those blocks than you would in 100 kilos of live rock, arguably. So I would just ditch the live rock. It's just a place for detritus to build up. Take it out piece by piece. Don't do it all overnight. And then improve the water flow and water distribution over those ceramic blocks. The miracle mud. Look, I haven't had a lot to do with it. I did run it at one stage. Look, I didn't notice any real benefits of it, but I did run it as a refugium, and I ran it in a fish system to try and lower nitrates, and it didn't work because, I don't know, I think there were other underlying facts there, but I don't think I was experienced enough at the time to actually, get benefit from it. So I can't really comment on that. If it's set up as a refugium, however, I do know that a lot of people have had success with it. Having said that, I don't see any active phosphorus removal within your system, whether I'm not sure whether you're dosing no-pox or whether you're running GFO or whatever it might be. Try not to get things that are going to compete against each other for nutrient, otherwise you're going to be constantly balancing the system. It's a nightmare. Choose one nutrient removal pathway and stick with it, and dial it in would be my advice. David asks, how much is too much, and how much biological media is too much, and how long does it take to properly seed a mature biological media? Okay, so how long is a piece of string? The short answer is double the length that it is from one end to the middle. So there's no hard and fast answer to that question. There are guidelines and information I can give you, though, that will shed more light on how long it would take to, one, establish and two, mature a biofilter. Now, recently we have been starting up a lot of biological filters and working through our newly developed program for starting up biological filters in aquaculture systems, that we have seen startup times from nothing to completely cycled in anywhere between 1.5 to 4 weeks. And I give that time frame because 1.5 weeks was everything was going smoothly, they were testing every day, they were keeping aeration up, they were monitoring all the parameters, and then the temperature was at 28 degrees plus. The 4-week timeline was at 8 degrees. So once you get below 15 degrees, the metabolic rate of your bacteria drops by more than 50%. So it's physically going to take at least twice as long to establish that biofilter than it would at 25 degrees or more, 25 degrees Celsius or more, which arguably is where, you know, bacteria are metabolizing at 100% of their potential metabolic rate. The other thing is how much ammonia and nitrite, or how much ammonia that is converted into nitrite, is available for those bacteria in order to actually feed on. What is your alkalinity like? What is your pH like? All of these parameters, whether or not they're in the optimal range for the metabolism of that bacteria, will affect how long it takes to start it up. Now, the startup procedures that we did were inoculating with pure strains of bacteria, adding a nutrient profile for trace elements, as well as to add food, a startup food for the bacteria, and then adding ammonium chloride and a one-off dose of sodium nitrite to the system in order to supply food to the nitrifiers, and then growing them with increasing levels of ammonium chloride calculated on the amount of fish that we wanted to put in. We have a calculator that draws that gives a direct calculation through an equation that allows us to determine how much ammonium chloride we need to add to emulate the amount of ammonia produced from a known volume of fish fed a known volume of food. Okay? So we start off by establishing the biofilter first, and then we increase it to the point where it's assimilating the amount of ammonia per day equivalent to the amount of ammonia that would be excreted by the fish that we're going to put in when we first stock. And that essentially means that we don't have spikes in ammonia. We have very little lag time in reduction of ammonia and nitrite in the system. It's worked very well so far. We are continually refining the process. How much biological media is too much? At the same time, Bruce, sodium nitrite at the same time as dosing ammonium chloride. It just means that the bacteria don't have to wait for the ammonia in the ammonium chloride to be nitrified into nitrite. The nitrifying bacteria that we add at the same time that we add the nitrite oxidizing bacteria that we add at the same time that we add the ammonia oxidizing bacteria have food available for them immediately. So we add it at the same time to a level of about 2 parts per million, and it's only a one-off dose because what time span between the two additions? 30 seconds. Yeah. So what we do is, if we have a biological filter, say a moving bed filter, we want to see 50% or more of that media in suspension before we start adding nutrient. So we add our bloom nutrient, which is a mix of different biological substances that add BOD to the water, as well as different things like macro and micro elements to the system. It also adds as a bit of bacterial food as well. And then we add our levels of ammonia and ammonium chloride and sodium nitrite at the same time. So it essentially just gives it a kick off, and then we just nurture them and nurse them and pat their bum and do whatever we need to do to get them growing as fast as possible, because we want things up and running as fast as possible. How much biological media is too much? There is no answer to that. You can never have too much biological media, because the bacterial population will develop to a point where it will self-regulate itself with the amount of ammonia being produced. So in that regard, you can never have too much biological media. However, in regards to economy, too much biological media means you've bought more than you actually need. It means that you are potentially expending energy or space or both on running, maintaining and housing that biological media that you wouldn't need to do had the biological media been sized correctly and the correct amount being applied. And then you've got things like its potential sites for detritus to build up and so on and so forth. Seeding versus maturing biological media. If you were to seed biological media and seed it with, say, even bacteria out of the atmosphere and just feed it ammonium chloride, or you were to add a commercial preparation like we have developed and then feed it with ammonium chloride to seed it, it will be seeded almost immediately, like once you add that, or it will start to become seeded once you start adding ammonium chloride and a source of ammonia, if you were just adding ammonia and letting the native bacteria move in. When we're talking about maturing, will the species of bacteria in a matured biofilter be the same as they were at the time of seeding? Unequivocally, no, they will not be. A biofilter will move through different population densities of different types of microbes throughout its lifetime, depending on how well it's maintained and so forth. So maturing a biofilter, I would say a biofilter would be matured to a point where it's stable and stably functioning, probably after a period of 6 months, if your fish additions were stable, so you had all the stock in there that you wanted, right? Obviously with growth, with new additions to fish and things like that, it's not going to put as much pressure on it, but then that will also change the population density and the microbial herd diversity within the system. So maturing, 6 to 12 months, I would say, until you get something really stable. But there are ways to accelerate that, obviously, through commercial preparations and so forth. Okay. Reese brought up an excellent question. Is there an upper limit to system turnover, and can you have too much? Reese turns his system over 17.5 times an hour. Is this too much turnover for my refugium and other types of media to work efficiently? So, in order to maintain water quality, you only need a turnover rate through your filtration system of about once to twice per hour. That's it. And to give you an idea, we design systems that denitrification I actually covered in my probiotic talk the other time. that we did the live stream, Bruce. So I went over both assimilatory and dissimilatory denitrification in that talk if you wanted to go back and watch that. So turnover, yeah. So in say barramundi systems or aquaculture systems, even live seafood holding systems, we could be holding upwards of 80 kilos of fish per cubic meter, which, you know, the amount of stock in an aquarium system would arguably probably be less than half a kilo per cubic meter of water, not even that. And we're turning our systems over 1.5 to 2 times an hour, generally speaking, for a stocking density of 80 to 100 kilos per cubic meter. So if we can maintain very good water quality with a 1 to twice per hour turnover through the filtration system, obviously considering that the filtration system has been designed and sized correctly, and, you know, that means sizing ozone correctly, sizing mechanical and biological filtration correctly, everything like that. You know, a turnover once or twice per hour through your filtration systems for a display aquarium is more than enough. Now, can you have too much? Yes, definitely. So, dwell time and contact time within biological filters directly influence the removal rates of those filters. So the more flow, the bigger the mechanical filter you need. So say in an aquaculture system we have what we call a rotating drum filter. Now, if we have a turnover of twice per hour, and say that's 1,000 litres a minute, for a 100,000 litre barramundi system, okay, it's also sized to the feed rate, right? If the feed rate, see you, Kev, have a good one, man. If you then have the same feed rate and the same water volume, but you want to turn that over more times per hour, the filter physically needs to be bigger in order to handle that amount of flow. So flow is the big thing. Dwell time in biological filters, the more time it spends in contact with the bacteria within that biological filter, means the higher amount of removal per pass, which means the better quality water going back to your system. Now, turnover rate in a coral tank, or for fish health, right, that can be achieved by wave makers. That is not influencing the amount of water that is passing over your filtration. It is not influencing the dwell time or the contact time with that filtration within the sump or the filters themselves. So, independent of one another, and you can still achieve sufficient flow with wave makers and water movement devices within the tank, without having to, you know, pump, you know, ludicrous amounts of water through your filtration. For instance, the more time you essentially want, for a refugium to be effective as a complete nutrient removal mechanism, you want a refugium that's approximately 20% of the volume of your display aquarium. And that's so, you know, you've only got algae in there, you don't need to put GFO in, generally speaking, and it will take care of the majority of the nitrate and phosphate within the system. And I see you lurking up there, Jason, and don't think that I've missed your comment about algae reactors. I will be scrolling back up and working through that. Yeah, hope that answers your question, Rose. Obviously, the faster the water flows through the sump, the faster it flows past your protein skimmer as well, which means that the protein skimmer is not having a chance to clean up the water within the sump as much as it would at a lower flow rate before it sends it back to the tank. So that's something to consider. Once to twice per hour, guys. I'm serious. Like, that's really all you need. Like our mate Jason Martin Powell here. A lot of you guys probably don't know him. Jason works for Macquarie University. He runs the zebrafish research lab at Macquarie Uni, and you know, fairly high density of fish, no aeration in there. We're turning that system over, I think, 3 to 5 times an hour just for the aeration in the system. just to keep oxygen levels up. But again, these fish are incredibly valuable too. But even at 5 times per hour, it's well and truly below 17.5 times an hour. But some guys are 10, 15, 20 times an hour through their filtration systems in their aquarium system. More flow isn't necessarily better. So, yeah, something to think about. Andy asked opinions on dry rock. I think I've gone over that. But coral and algae coverage, obviously, anything that covers the surface of that dry rock or live rock as it becomes is going to impede the flow and then reduce its ability to act as a biological filtration mechanism. There is no way to maintain and clean live rock once it's within your scape. People that say, I've got 150 kilos of live rock, so my filtration's great. Yeah, fantastic. Can you quantify the amount of nitrification, denitrification, and microbial mass within that live rock? No, you can't, because there's no specification and there's no way to reliably say that every bit of live rock has that amount of surface area. There's no way to quantify the amount of detritus that builds up in it. There's no way to quantify the amount of water movement through it. There's no way you can do it. So you've got a sump. Make sure that you've got enough filtration within that sump to support the system. Don't worry about live rock. Let live rock be the scape. Let live rock be the buffer. Don't rely on it. It's not something you want to be relying on. He also asked, do I think roller mats can take out too much? No, you can never take out too much detritus because detritus is the enemy. Mechanical filtration is arguably probably one of the 2 most important things that you need to maintain your system. And the more waste that you pull out, the better before it gets to the rest of the system, because it just puts load on the rest of the system. Okay, Matt asks, what are the benefits, effects of different types of media? Types of flow through different media and effects from that, and potentially how to use it on manipulated to your system. So, we have a plethora of different biological filtration medias that are available within the industry. You've got fluid bed filters, you've got moving bed media, you've got bioballs. Each of them are used in different sort of applications. It really annoys me when people say bioballs and nitrate bombs. They produce too much nitrate. Put in live rock, it doesn't produce nitrate. Horseshit, essentially. Bioballs produce lots of nitrate because bioballs are designed to oxidize ammonia and nitrite into nitrate, and that's it. They do their job incredibly effectively. That they are good at what they do. They're probably one of the most efficient biological filters that you have available to you. They do have their drawbacks in blocking, and they need a certain amount of head to run them, and you need a wet-dry setup and all that kind of thing. But saying they're a nitrate bomb, no. I mean, ammonia is ammonia. Ammonia is going to produce nitrite, which is going to produce nitrate, and no matter how you do that, you're still going to have the same amount of nitrate being produced. It's the amount of nitrate that you can remove with your other filtration devices that affects whether or not you notice that nitrate building up. Okay. The benefits of each one of them, I'm going to go through each sort of biological filter as we get further into the talk, Matt. So yeah, thank you very much for raising that. I just thought I'd throw that bit in there about that nitrate bomb fallacy. It's complete crap. And ways to remove finer particles from the system and micron sizes, etc. So yeah, that's on the cards. So let me just go back through a couple of the questions that we have here. All right, Angie asks, does using an air stone under some media help bacteria? If it is aerobic nitrifying bacteria, yes. If you don't have enough oxygen within your system. Okay. Doesn't matter when the lights are on or off. Doesn't really matter. It's just adding oxygen to the system. These nitrifying bacteria that are oxidizing ammonia into nitrite and nitrite into nitrate, they need oxygen. So you need to supply them with oxygen, and adding oxygen directly to where the biofilter is only going to mean, it will mean that you have abundant oxygen available, and they're never going to be lacking oxygen. So they'll just be working at peak performance. Okay. Oxygen is you can add oxygen to the system in many different ways. I'll get into moving bed filters. They are actually aerated filters. So yeah, and that's one of the benefits to them. Karen asks, can you dispose of dirty mechanical filters in general waste? How about backwash effluent? In a trade application, in a large industrial application, you would need to talk to the wastewater authority in the area to see whether or not you can actually discharge that wastewater effluent and what the effluent concentrations would be. Dirty mechanical filters in general waste, everyone does it. That has an aquarium. I don't think you'd ever get in trouble unless you had a huge, facility, and then you're not a hobbyist anymore. So yeah. Brett asks, what mechanical filtration micron levels for salt water? 50, 100, 200. I'm going to answer that in just a second. Thoughts on algae reactor on nitrates? Algae reactors, algae, macroalgae in salt water, or even plants in fresh water, they take up nitrate and phosphate. So although it's not really what we're covering in this talk, they have proven to be incredibly effective on nitrate removal. In a freshwater application, would you be better putting something like marine pure or high surface area media in, or even just exchanging more water? Probably. Yeah. I've answered Bruce's questions. Thank you very much for your input, Campbell. I hope to hear more from you tonight. How about non-biological methods for ammonia control? You mean zeolite? That's an interesting question, Bruce. In some salmon egg incubation systems, we kind of developed this system out of necessity for really low temperature stuff. We're operating at like 4 to 8 degrees. Biological filtration just doesn't really work at those levels, and you need like 2 to 3 times the amount of media, and the removal rates are so much lower per pass, and it just doesn't make sense, especially for eggs, considering that you're not really producing a lot of ammonia until hatch, and then it happens very quickly after that anyway. So ripping it out really fast is beneficial, and then we just recharge the zeolite with a saturated brine of salt water, sodium chloride dissolved in water at 100 parts per thousand, essentially 3 times the strength of seawater, roughly. And that's in freshwater. Saltwater, it's argued that this zeolite can work in saltwater. There's been limited success in doing that. I'd like to actually trial that more, but that's beside the point. So the removal of ammonia with the zeolite is completely dependent on the cation exchange capacity, or the CEC. And with published data on the CEC on this particular zeolite, we were able to work out how much ammonia it would be able to absorb in the volumes of the filters that we were putting in, so that we could work out, yes, are these filters filled with this zeolite going to be big enough per run so that they won't have to backwash it mid-hatchery run, recharge it mid-hatchery run. We then follow that up with carbon as well, just to polish it up. Freshwater foam fractionation, ozone. We had some degassing on there as well, a high level of UV as well. That worked really well, and consequently, throughout that company, each hatchery that we have built moving forward for them has employed that exact technology. So it's incredibly effective. TiO2, titanium oxide. as a photocatalytic breakdown of NH3. I haven't seen anything. If you've got any white papers on it, Bruce, I would well and truly welcome, seeing info on that if you wanted to. It would definitely be very infantile in its development, would be my gut feel, considering I haven't heard of it. Yeah. So, right. So, to start the talk, mechanical filtration, when we're talking about mechanical filtration, we want to remove all of the particles from the water so that it doesn't clog up our biological media, it doesn't, leave detritus in our sumps, it eases the load on the foam fractionator or the protein skimmer, so that it can remove fine particles and remove them, a lot of them per pass. So the more effective that our mechanical filtration is, the less that the rest of our filtration, whether it's biological filtration or anything like that, needs to operate at. Now, the level that we aim for in aquaculture is 50 to 60 microns. And 60 microns I say because the majority of smaller particles are well and truly below 40 microns, so it's no use going to 40 microns because the drum filter needs to be exponentially bigger, or the mechanical filtration needs to be exponentially bigger, and you can remove them more easily through ozone, foam fractionation, bead filtration, other stuff like that that actually targets that range of finer particle. There's no use putting in mechanical filtration to do that as the primary step. The second reason is that we want to, in regards to UV sterilization, we want to remove particles down to 50 microns to prevent shading. And essentially shading is, when I went over UV sterilizers in some of my talks, it's where a particle shades or acts as a shading to the pathogen organism that's floating through it, and essentially acts as a big old umbrella or a hat or a shade cloth, and so that the organism doesn't get nuked by the UV. So that's the other reason that we want to do that. Now, roller mats, I don't have a lot to do with them, but I would be, if I was buying one, I would be assessing what the micron rating of the actual mat is on the roller mat. When you're talking about socks, I hate filler socks. I hate using them. Absolutely hate them. They're messy, they're difficult to operate, they block up too quickly, they've got bugger all surface area, the waste sits in them and breaks down and it gets emulsified as the water's flowing through them. They're just a headache to use as a primary mechanical filtration. In certain circumstances where we've got hatcheries that we need to really clean up the water coming in, where we're filtering down to 1 micron, you can't use anything else. But for mechanical filtration in a biological system, like a research system or an aquarium system, I just don't think they're adequate. Is my opinion. I don't like using them for a variety of reasons that I just went over. Filter mat is by far probably a better option for you. People are making acrylic cups and putting filter mat in them, or they have drip trays that they have filter mat go through. Generally speaking, a lot of these filter mats are like air conditioning mats, and they have dust ratings on them. Although it probably doesn't really directly cross over into removal rates for water. You have a circumstance where you have removal rates for dust that can give you a general idea, and you'll be able to get to a removal rate of 50 micron easily with a lot of these filter mats. We actually sell a specialised filter mat that will remove 80% of dust particles down to 10 microns. So they're very useful and cheap, really. And you can keep them out of the water if you want to, and you can wash them off and reuse them a few times too. For aquarium systems, look, the only other real way that you can remove particles is by some sort of packed bed that the water flows up through, and sometimes that can be a little bit more trouble than it's worth if it's not designed correctly. As long as you're removing enough of the coarser particles with a suitable filtration media, and you have an adequately sized protein skimmer, your protein skimmers will remove 50 micron and below particles, so that can clean up your water pretty well as well. Your biological filter will actually remove a lot of your microparticles and stuff from the water as well. So through absorption through the biofilm. So that's another vector of fine particle removal that you can work with. So yeah, mechanical filtration in a nutshell. We just want to remove as much of the finer particles as we possibly can without having to go to exorbitant lengths and costs to do it, essentially, because it has flow-on effects for everything down the road. Now, when we are talking about biological filtration, geez, like, we've got a huge amount of options. Suppose I should probably start at the bottom, where everyone started with, like, sponge filters and under gravel filters. They were, fantastic for a lot of applications, but you need to maintain them like everything else. With the advent of specialised mechanical filtration and biological filtration being separated, then you had the ability to keep your biological filter media very nice and clean, whilst you had the ability to export your mechanical waste much more quickly and effectively throughout your system. So then the age of bioables came in, and biological filtration was sort of revolutionised in aquaculture applications and even aquarium applications with the bioball. As I went through, they're incredibly efficient at oxidising ammonia to nitrite and nitrite to nitrate. That is their job. They work in a completely aerobic environment because they're a trickle filter. They're a wet and dry filter. So the oxygen component that surrounds them is 100% saturation. They have no area for denitrification to occur because they're not submerged. So they do their job very, very well. And the thing about trickle filters is the more water that you put over them and the higher the load of ammonia that you put through them, to a certain point, the more they will remove. They're incredibly flexible, and because they're so heavily oxygenated, because they're in that wet, dry environment with the water constantly cascading through them, they have the ability to remove incredibly high levels of ammonia and nitrite from the system. So the downfall with trickle filters is you need head, so you need height to actually pack the bed and trickle the water over through them. It's hard to mechanically filter them unless you have something above them prior to them, and then getting that filter mat out and things like that can be a little bit of a headache to achieve. In certain circumstances, you then have blocking as a concern because they don't self-clean, and the mold that builds up, in them does, it can become problematic, especially in highly loaded applications. But we employ trickle filters as degassing units for removal of CO2 in aquaculture with great effect. And we also use them as trickle filter media as contact media for ozone saturation in certain vessels. We have sufficient biological filtration, mechanical filtration to prevent them blocking, and we sometimes add ozone to the reactors and stuff like that to keep them nice and clean. If biological filtration isn't the first objective of the filter. So that's trickle filters in a nutshell. You want to use a media that's open, that can free drain. Using high surface area media that packs together really finely is actually going to be worse for you than a much more open media. But then you have you don't have the benefit of high surface area like you do with other media. So there is a trade-off there. When we're talking about waste control, waste build-up, and biofilm control in particular, we then come to the technology that we use mostly in aquaculture called moving bed filters. So moving bed filters, you've seen the K1 filters. The media essentially bounces around inside this reactor. You aerate it from the bottom. And as it's moving around, it scours itself, knocks off the waste, knocks off inefficient layers of bacteria, and it aerates the media as well. Now, the nuances of moving bed filter design is you can really get into the deep parts of velocity and scouring of the plumes of air that go into it, and we've done a lot of work with moving beds. It is the primary filter that we use in our applications, because you do have biofilm control, you do have the ability to aerate the media directly, you do have very high dwell times for very high removal rates. You do have biofilm control, which means that you get maximum nitrification out of each square metre of surface area within the filter. It really ticks all the boxes. The disadvantage to them, if there is any, is that you need quite a large reactor to do it. So you only fill it to about 50% fill so that you can physically fluidize and circulate this media. So that means that essentially if you needed 1,000 litres of media, you need a 2,000 litre reactor, and then you need to aerate it from the bottom. There's other problems like how do you deploy the aeration diffusers and things like that for it. We've got a few systems that we've developed that we believe solve those problems. So we're constantly working on R&D to improve our designs as well. But moving bed filters originally started in sewage treatment works, as did a lot of the filtration for aquaculture and aquariums. Originally started in wastewater treatment and then moved itself over into these sort of areas. Moving beds have become much more popular over about the last 5 to 10 years in aquariums. And they're pretty foolproof, pretty bulletproof, really. Once they're up and running, there's a hell of a lot of different media, and how you apply that media, depends on your experience and knowledge with the system. It's not as easy as just throwing a certain type of media in there and aerating the bejesus out of it and hoping for the best and thinking that it's going to, surface areas and everything. It's the design of the reactor is very, very important, and how you utilize that media and how it's put in there. But that's moving bed filter. It pretty much solves all the problems with really thick biofilms and waste build-up and lack of oxygen that other filters have. So they're an incredibly versatile, incredibly powerful filter. Best type of media for a trickle filter, Brett? Look, there's not any best type of media. You probably want an engineered type of media that has a high void space, so above 85 to 90% void space. And that essentially means how much room there is in between the pins and the actual design of the bioball itself, whilst also trying to aim for as high a surface area as you can possibly get. So, you're aiming for over 300 square metres per cubic metre. in relation to that, moving bed media can be upwards of 1,000 square meters per cubic meter easily. So, you have an advantage for moving bed media there. But they remove different amounts of ammonia and nitrite per square meter of surface area depending on the hydraulic loading rate that you're putting over them, depending on the dwell time, the different design aspects of different filters, so how high the media pack bed is, how deep the moving bed reactor is, how much time the water spends in them, how the water moves through them, how it's circulated. It's not a simple answer, but you want something with a high void area that's going to drain really well, that's going to pack randomly in your filter so that you've got a lot of agitation within your trickle filter. Using a high surface area media like Marine Pure in a trickle filter application probably isn't the best way to use that media, nor would it be the best environment for it to exist in, because it doesn't have a lot of void area, it doesn't have a lot of surface area, it doesn't have a lot of void area. Marine Pure is best used after a series of mechanical filtration processes like primary mechanical filtration, fine mechanical filtration for polishing, whether that be protein skimming, whether that be fine mechanical pads, whether that be pack beds of zeolite media or plastic media or whatever, like in the fluid canisters. So yeah, it's you want an open media that's going to drain really well and go really well in that kind of application. Campbell asks, do I rate Marine Pure as highly as it is hyped up as a biological media? All the science is there, essentially. Marine Pure I have used personally for many, many years, and I can say that it produces a superior water quality compared to other media of the same volume. I can definitely attest to the fact that it does not block, because I have not cleaned the stuff for months and months and months and months and months. And you take it out and get some clean tank water out of the tank and give it a slosh and nothing comes out of it. The stuff, waste just flows through it. Now, having said that, if you've got Marine Pure and you put that as the only media within your system and had no mechanical filtration and your tank was an absolute cesspool, yes, it would block, as any media would. But it's going to be it's going to be more resistant to blocking and less likely to block than a fine, poor media like, say, clay balls or Cyperax or sintered glass or anything like that that's Peruke these incredibly high surface areas. But usable surface area is the key. Now, if anyone is interested, if they go into the Marine Pure website, I actually did a write-up for Chris at Aqua Premium many, many years ago that he then forwarded on to Sir Media that make Marine Pure about surface area and usable surface area versus available surface area and the design aspect of Marine Pure. I would urge people to go and read that to get a better idea of what they're sort of looking at, because these are the aspects of biological filter design, not only Marine Pure, but the other medias that say that they have these features in these high surface areas. For something like 1 litre of media, like sintered glass, for example, like 1 litre of this sintered glass material has something like 30,000 square metres of surface area. We're talking about pores on a microscopic level. Now, that's going to block with whether bacteria can physically even penetrate that is one question. Whether once the bacteria are growing in there, whether it would allow the passage of enough oxygen, ammonia, nitrate, whatever it is that's passing through there to be effective is another question. And thirdly, once you start to get bacteria actually dying off in there, sloughing off and blocking up the pores, the usable surface area on the outside of those really fine pore medias is bugger all. It's on the outside, the surface area is all you've got. So, it's looking at the science behind the design of the biological media and looking at how to best utilize the characteristics of the media to to the advantage and for the best performance of the media. Any thoughts on continuous maintenance dosing of different bacteria? Andy, if you haven't looked at my probiotic live stream, I would suggest you go and have a look at that, because I go over that in detail for both nitrifying bacteria and probiotic bacteria. I'll come back to it if we have time after we go through a few things, and we'll see where we go from there. Another type of biological filtration media that has been used in aquaculture to some fantastic effect and still remains in use today for certain system designs is fluidized bed filter or fluidized sand filters. These things use a really, really fine grade of sand that allows them to have an incredible surface area and an incredible amount of ammonia removal per pass, but not as much as you would think for the amount of surface area in them. So, to give you an idea, a cubic meter of sand with a surface area of 30,000 square meters per cubic meter, as opposed to a cubic meter of moving bed media that only has 1,000 square meters per cubic meter, you might be able to remove a kilo of ammonia, 1,000 grams of ammonia per day per cubic meter with this stuff. A cubic meter of moving bed media might be able to remove 150 to 200 grams of ammonia per cubic meter of media. So you're talking about, if we're talking about square meters of surface area, we're talking about, if it's 1,000 square meters for a cubic meter of moving bed media, you're talking about 5,000 square meters versus 30,000 square meters for the same ammonia removal. What's the go? Well, the fluid bed filter has incredibly high removal rates per pass. So you can have 95 to 100% removal rate of all the ammonia that goes through these things per pass as it passes through it. So essentially nearly all the ammonia going through the filter, only 10%, if that, actually makes it past the filter and goes back to the tank to be blended with the rest of the tank water. So the residuals within the system are a lot lower. The other advantage is a much smaller footprint in general. You do need to have much higher pumping heads, so you need a lot of pressure. The reason why sand filters don't have a huge amount of nitrification compared to their surface area is because the exfoliation of the bacteria on the outside of the sand grains is so much more aggressive, because the velocity that you need to push that sand and fluidize it is so high that it essentially rubs the bacteria off and exfoliates it so that it can't occupy enough sites on that sand. It makes it less efficient. The other thing is as temperatures go up, the amount of biofilm growth on that sand is a lot higher. So what happens is it makes the sand particles lighter, so they start to float out of the system. Or you get different areas within the sand filter, so you get high amounts of nitrification at the bottom, and then as those sand particles get lighter, they expand. The bed expands more and more as it goes up the column, and essentially you have all this gunk floating at the top. There are certain designs that take that exfoliated or slothed off bacteria and reintroduce it into the bottom and mitigate that problem. But incredibly effective way to remove ammonia and nitrite. You don't need a huge footprint, arguably a hell of a lot less footprint than a moving bed. But they do have their drawbacks. You need a lot more energy to pump through them, and so forth. It all depends on the design of the system and how you're putting the system together, really. How much height you need for other filtration processes within the system itself. Okay, so then you've got things like bead filters. Bead filters are a mechanical and a biological filter in one. And obviously, if you're loading a biological filter up with mechanical waste, you're going to have a reduction in the amount of biological action that you can achieve within that filter, and you need to backwash that to get rid of it. So you can see how the impact of mechanical waste on a biological filter really impacts how much it can process. Bruce is asking, is there issues of excessive bacterial sloth in a sand filter? Yes, definitely. Cold water less so, warm water more so, as I went over. And sand washout is an issue, yes. So you can expect to lose a quarter to one full volume of a fluidized sand filter per year. And that is where, if you're running a fluidized sand filter, you should put the pre-described amount of sand within the filter, have the pump turned off, mark where the sand level is on the sight glass on the filter, then start it up. Then every month or every fortnight, turn it off. If the level of sand is below that mark that you put on it, top it up with new sand and keep it constant. Don't turn it off for too long though, otherwise the bacteria will die, it'll go anoxic, you'll be in all sorts of trouble. So we're removing waste with mechanical filtration, which affects our biological filtration, to a large degree. But what are we removing? I mean, you're removing mechanical waste that can break down further into ammonia and nitrite. That's pretty straightforward. But you're removing BOD, so you're removing biological oxygen demand. And biological oxygen demand is anything that's, fine particles, it's anything that's going to break down, it's anything that's, potentially going to break down either into more ammonia or into things that are going to suck up oxygen within the system. Now, if you have X amount of oxygen that is required for the respiration of your fish, and you have X amount of oxygen that is needed for the biological filter, and you are meeting those oxygen demands with the amount of oxygen, whether it's aeration or pure oxygen, that you're putting into the system. Okay. If you then have your mechanical filter break down, if your mechanical filter gets clogged and you don't clean it, if you're a bit slack with your maintenance and things like that, more waste is going to come through, or the waste within that mechanical filter is going to break down and add more demand on the oxygen, on the biological oxygen demand, the BOD of the system. That means, one, you'll get excessive biofilm growth because you're going to physically have more food there for the bacteria in both ammonia and nitrite, as well as organic carbon, as well as all sorts of other waste that's going to go through the system. Secondly, you're not going to have as much oxygen available, so one, your fish are potentially going to suffer if it's bad enough. Secondly, your biofilter is going to have to work harder to get the oxygen that it requires to process the amount of ammonia and nitrite that would usually be there, plus any additional ammonia and nitrite that's coming through because your mechanical filter isn't working effectively, plus the additional oxygen that's required to actually get rid of all this extra waste that's coming through. So by doubling down on your mechanical filtration, you can, if you've got a shortfall in your biological filtration and you've, say, got filter socks on your system, leave the filter socks in there, go and buy yourself some fine filter mat and stuff them in the filter socks. And I will almost nearly guarantee that your system will, one, it'll be cleaner overnight, and secondly, that if you did have residual ammonia and nitrite levels within the system, they will drop off because you're physically removing that waste from the system. Now, will there be a lag time there? Will you have a higher removal rate at the start than you would, ongoing once you get on top of the problem? Yes, you will. But this is how important mechanical filtration is. So, and constant removal of that mechanical waste is very important. Sorry guys, I just need to rehydrate here. And my beer tap is pouring a lot of foam at the moment, so I'm just going to have to wait for that to remedy itself. Bruce, you asked survival times in power outages. Look for any biological filter. For a trickle filter, much more time, because it's going to be in a highly aerated environment and a humid environment, and you're going to have a lot of water film on the outside of the media. When we're talking about fluid bed filter, because that sand is going to pack down and be compacted, not have water flow, not have oxygen flow through it, and not have the ability to have oxygen penetrate through that bed of sand, I would say that you'd be running into danger probably after an hour. You'd be having some problems after about an hour. You'd have some die off, and then it would get exponentially worse. It's hard to quantify because it really depends on how much biomass is physically on the outside of that sand, plus how oxygenated the system is, how much ammonia is in the water, so how fast that oxygen is physically going to be used up. When you've got a packed bed like bead filters, that the same would apply, although it's going to be even worse than a bead filter because you're going to have mechanical waste in there that's constantly going to be breaking down as well as in a bead filter you're going to have a much higher level of heterotrophs versus autotrophic nitrifying bacteria that consume much more oxygen a lot faster than autotrophic bacteria that you would have more of an abundance of in a fluidized sand filter. Now, fluidized sand filters have a huge array of different microorganisms in them, not just autotrophic nitrifying bacteria, just like a moving bed does. This is another advantage of a moving bed. Obviously, if you've only got half of that space occupied with media, yes, the media is going to pack because there's not going to be any more aeration. However, if you have the media pack, but then you have double and look, the bulk density of this media is 180 kilos, 200 kilos per cubic meter. So there's a lot of water in and around because it's like a very open media, that cellular sort of wagon wheel looking sort of design of the media. You're going to have a lot more oxygen present within that reactor than you would in a sand filter or a trickle filter, which means that the survival times of a moving bed in a power outage could be 6 hours, maybe more, depending on, again, how much ammonia is in the system, what the biomass of bacteria is on the outside of that filter, so on and so forth. Packed beds, if they're not maintained enough, will have a build-up of waste, which can lead to proliferation of hydrogen sulfide-producing bacteria, which can produce huge problems. This is why I don't like live rock in cryptic zones in tanks. They clog. The pore sizes vary greatly. I don't like them, and it's hard to get even water distribution throughout them. It's just get a media that you can control the flow, control the oxygen, control the amount of waste going through them, and apply it in the right way, and you'll solve most of your problems. Campbell. So really varies dependent on oxygen levels in the system. Yes, but not only that, oxygen levels in the system, the ammonia levels within the system that then dictate the population of the bacteria on that media. and then how that media behaves in power outage, if we're talking about how long the bacteria are going to survive. Now, if we're talking about performance of bacteria in general, it is oxygenation of the system. It is how it controls the biofilm growth on that filtration media. It is the performance of the media and how much energy it takes to actually get that media to perform in the way that you need it to in order to remove the amount of ammonia and nitrite from the system that you have. It's a lot of different factors. I know a lot of guys in the coral scene these days are using scoria filters, and they are applying the scoria as a high surface area media and then aerating it from underneath. So that is essentially blasting air up through it to keep it oxygenated so that the bacteria have oxygen to, respire and process the ammonia and nitrite. But it's then also, what it's doing is it's creating velocity and shearing, which is essentially, it would blast off the old dead areas of bacteria and mold and build up and crud that you would have in the filter. That would be the same as using marine purity, exactly the same circumstance. Is iron content an issue? I'm assuming you mean iron content in regards to using scoria. Now, scoria is a vascular basalt product, and that would entirely depend on the geological location of the basalt itself. What form, if any, if the iron content is actually bound up within the structure of the scoria itself. I don't have the answer to that question. I know that it's being used very successfully in quite a few different facilities at the moment, and it has been used in the past to great effect. I know sleepy cod farms, fish farms that will run on filters that contain scoria as their filtration medium. I've seen scoria used in many different applications. And the quality of scoria and the vascular layout of the scoria itself is very, very important as well. I use scoria from time to time as a potting medium. It keeps things very well aerated. It does have the ability to hold on to films of water as well. So that's where I in this vascular structure, very similar to marine pure in that instance, but marine pure is engineered. You got to remember, it's engineered to have a certain pore size. It's engineered to have, it's engineered to perform the way it's meant to perform, as is the bright world brick and all that kind of stuff as well. Red screws I thought were high in iron as well, but it's whether or not that iron is actually biologically available, and whether it could be broken down. Having said that, iron is a component for coral growth as well. So I don't know whether it would be too much of a problem. I don't know what colour scoria these guys are using in their facilities, and arguably it would probably be different scoria from different areas depending on where the facility is. So God only knows. I've seen much worse stuff being used. So yeah, but these are in marine applications. So yeah, Well, we've got a bit of an electrical storm happening out here, guys, at home. It's raining pretty hard at the moment, so, and just, oh yeah, there's the thunder. Well, it's a fair way away though, so it should be alright. So, what were a few other questions that we had here? Okay, so, continual dosing of different bacterial products. I suppose that does come into play with biological filtration to a certain extent. So, like I was talking about when you first put in a biofilter and establish a biofilter, the progression and development of the diversity of the microbial herd over time will change. Whether it changes for the best or not is another question. It will stabilise. Now, the circumstances at which you would apply a commercial preparation for nitrification itself would be one, if you had, say, a power outage and you had a die-off in your biofilter. Secondly, you would use it if you wanted to reinvigorate your biofilter. So say your biofilter just got really dirty and really cruddy and you gave it a really big overhaul, like yes, you've let your sump go, your sump's built up with mold, it's been ages since you've actually done it, and you've cleaned it out and you're just like, yeah, this is gonna need more excessive cleaning than just rinsing it in a bucket of water. I'm gonna have to blast this stuff with RO or something, and you want to make sure that you put bacteria back in there just as safeguard to sort of reinvigorate the bacteria on the biological filter. That would be another circumstance where you use it. The third is if you've noticed that your biofilter is starting to become a little bit inefficient. So there are arguments to all three. You wouldn't probably add nitrifying bacteria on a constant basis, and I'm talking like once every month or 2 months. You might redose it, once every 3 to 6 months, if you were experiencing a problem. It's kind of a judgment call at that point. Probiotic bacteria, that is going to depend on waste levels within the system that will be directly influenced by your level of mechanical filtration. It would be influenced by the prevalence of organic carbon in the system, which would be, one, influenced by the amount of mechanical filtration within your system, because waste equals organic carbon. So you can have natively occurring organic carbon driving a certain amount of heterotrophic bacterial growth. Thirdly, it will depend on whether or not your system actually needs a probiotic, whether it's for disease control or whether it's for waste control. And will that affect your biological filtration? Probably not. As long as you have all of your other filtration mechanisms in check. So if you had sufficient mechanical filtration, sufficiently sized foam fractionation, sufficiently sized biological filtration, adding and accelerating the growth of probiotic bacteria through the addition of a bacterial solution as well as organic carbon can be very beneficial. You do have to watch it though. You can overdo it. You get your slime growth and stuff like that. It's not great. So it all sort of entwines with each other. You definitely want to make sure that you're on top of your maintenance, though. It irks me a bit when you get on there and you say, oh, you thought it might be a bit dirty or whatever, and then you get people that said, I haven't cleaned my sump in 10 years and the mold's 2 inches thick and I don't have any ammonia or I don't have any nitrate or phosphate and my parameters are perfect. Well, yes, they might be now, but they're not telling you the time that they stirred up the mold and all of their corals closed up and they lost a heap of Duncan stems, or they're not telling you You know, the one time they had the sump turned off and they stirred up a little bit of the waste and they smelled hydrogen sulfide and it knocked them out. Or, you know, they're not telling you these things. The fact of the matter is that mechanical waste leads to nutrient loading. Okay, sorry, no, I'll go back a step. Food equals waste. Waste equals load. Load equals, if it's not removed, build-up of undesirable particles within the system. And then depending on whether they're oxygenated or not, will depend on whether they're oxidized and removed by bacteria, whether they are left to rot and eventually build up to a point where they will cause a problem. The fact of the matter is, you need to get those fish turds out. And I don't care what tank it is or what it is. The prevalence of waste within the system is undoubtedly going to negatively affect the system at one point or another if it's not removed. And I would rather remove it at the start before it causes a problem and before I have to do a complete overhaul of my sump, rather than it potentially cause a problem down the track. So, you know, I haven't used a lot of these new things on the market at the moment for the removal of mechanical waste at this point in time. Roller mats specifically, I'm talking about. Actually, just one, really. I can see the appeal. I can see the benefit to a certain extent. But yeah, that's, I don't know. Yeah. Angie, you need to see what some of the ICP test results are of the reefers using it. If you're referring to scoria beds, yeah, I do believe you could probably. You could probably get it ICP tested. I know that some of the guys using scoria filters are producing some world-class corals. So take that how you will. Obviously, it's, you know, concentration versus toxicity, if there is any toxicity relating to that particular product and its use. So yeah. Interesting. I'm sure there's things I've forgotten. Does anyone have any other questions? Fire them at me. It's actually, I thought it was actually going to be a lot more complex, but it actually wasn't really as complex as I thought it was going to be. This stream. The questions at the start really helped to knuckle out a lot of the things that I was going to cover. Does anyone have any questions? Any questions at all? What's a roller mat worth in comparison to a small drum filter? I don't sell roller mats, and small drum filter, again, how long's a piece of string, Andrew? Look, small drum filter, we sell TM1, oh God, I don't even know what price TM1 is these days. But it's, what are you trying to do? I mean, it's, if you're talking about a home aquarium, you'd never apply a drum filter to a home aquarium anyway. If you were talking about a hatchery or a small grow-out system or something like that, what do you want to do, and how effectively do you want to do it? A drum filter you probably wouldn't apply to anything less than an aquaponics system or a small-scale aquaculture system. A roller mat, you'd never apply it into an aquaculture system, you'd only apply it into an aquarium system. So I'm not sure what the reference to that question is, what you're sort of looking at. Do you have any more information on what you're sort of aiming to do there? Angie, do you work within the industry or are you a hobbyist? I must admit I've never heard your name before. What about using a power filter like in DSR method? Andy, could you elaborate a little bit? I'm not familiar with that. What's a scoria filter and how does it work? Essentially, it's just scoria that's put inside a vessel that water is flowed through and it's aerated from the bottom. Essentially, just another sort of biological filter media, just like marine pure or something like that. And it's aerated from the bottom to make sure it's well oxygenated so that the nitrifying bacteria can do its job. And so it takes water and oxygen and nutrients through the filter bed to make sure that they don't block over time and to make sure that the bacteria have access to it. Again, all about utilizing the filter media that you have in the correct way for the best effect. That's all it's about. I mean, look, you wouldn't go getting sand and just throw it into your sump and expect it to work the same as a moving bed. You know, you throw sand in and then you put air stones on the bottom, and it might move a little bit of the sand around it, but essentially then you just have clear areas around the air stone because sand sinks and moving bed media floats. So it's all about, you know, using the media the correct way to maximise its efficiency. You work at the tech den. Say hello to John for me. Haven't heard from him in a while, actually. Hope he's doing well. Yeah, dirt cheap media. Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. It's very scoria is very old. Obviously, it's a volcanic basaltic rock, and it's incredibly old and arguably incredibly stable. A drum filter, you don't need to replace the filter mat like you do a roller mat. And it's not going to handle high sediment loads. You are absolutely correct. The only thing is that with the drum filter you have wastewater production, whereas with the roller mat you do not. But the micron sizes can be targeted with the drum filter, whereas with a roller mat perhaps not, but I haven't done a lot of reading into roller mats because I don't use them, because in our industry we don't utilise them. The roller mat, as I said, you know, they can say, oh, it's automated and whatever. Or what I want to know from a mechanical filter is what is the micron size that it removes in waste, and what is the efficiency of that removal? That's what I want to know from a mechanical filtration component. Yeah, I don't know what roller mats are. If they're 50 micron, it's definitely removing waste at a far higher rate than any of the available commercial solutions available for, or not commercial solutions available for aquarists at the moment. Save maybe filter mat, but that's a bit labour intensive and a bit ugly and a bit hard to apply unless you, as I said, applying it in a submerged fashion, like what they call an acrylic filter sock, or even, you know, your filter socks and lining them with filter mat. Yeah, there's an opening there for some technology and an increase in technology for mechanical filtration for aquariums, definitely. Using a high return pump as a power filter. Okay, so You asked, what about using a power filter like in DSR method? And then you said using a high return pump as a power filter. I still don't understand what you mean. What's the DSR method that you're referring to? Yeah, well, I mean, Andrew, you're talking, chalk and cheese here. When you talking about when you're talking about a roller mat versus a drum filter, and it all depends on what your water usage is like, and what how much water you're willing to waste, how much money you've got to spend, essentially. I'm not sure what you mean through a hydroclone. What do you mean through a hydroclone? Power filter DSR reefing. Okay, so you'll have to excuse my ignorance here a bit, Andy. I'm just seeing a pump with plumbing going in and out of it. Can you explain what the DSR method is and why how this pump relates to it, and what the concept of it is? Excuse my ignorance. I've just never heard any of these terms, and that picture doesn't really shed any light on what you're trying to get across. Sorry. Yeah, I'm not sure what you mean by the pumped power filter, Andrew. I'm going to need more info, dude. Through a hydrocyclone, the pumped power filter. Again, can you explain it a little bit better? I'm still not. Yeah, I'm still not. Yeah, picking up what you're laying down. Look, I mean, at the end of the day, if you're looking for low water use and good mechanical filtration properties, something like a bead filter or a sand filter with the media changed out to something that's a little bit, less fine, that you can backwash periodically, might be a better application for you. Obviously, that's coupled with, removing coarse solids via gravity separation and things like that. Yeah. I am very, very familiar with the water co-hydrocyclones, yes. Bear in mind, water co-hydrocyclones only remove particles between, 50 to 100 microns. And the particles also are passing through an impeller and a pump, which are chewing them up finer. And, the removal rates per part. They also have an incredible operating head pressure, which requires a bigger pump. Dutch synthetic roofing. Strong pump with filter wall on the intake. Okay. Right. So look, from the outside looking in, from the outside looking in, putting um, putting filter mat on the internal of the pump intake and having it circulate water through the tank is, I think, probably just a more complicated way to achieve mechanical filtration removal with a much higher labour content that you could achieve with a properly sized protein skimmer and adequate mechanical filtration on your main filtration. Yeah, although, you know, I'm not familiar with that system at all. He may be getting great results with his coral and things like that. However, whether it's directly correlated to, I mean, he says it's directly correlated to the fact that he's running that power filter. But yeah, I don't like the look of it. The labour content alone, messy. The filter mat wouldn't last forever. There's easier and better and less energy hungry ways of both circulating water and removing mechanical waste. Honestly, what I would do is I would buy, it's an internal sponge filter on steroids. That's exactly what it is. Why wouldn't you buy more power heads and circulate the water to keep the waste in suspension, and then have a adequate and properly sized mechanical filtration removal mechanism on your filtration down below, where you can centralize everything and you've got more room, and then you don't have filter mat hanging around in your tank, and you don't have to increase the flow going through your filtration, which means that you have more adequate removal of ammonia and nitrite and waste particles within the system, within the sump system. I think that's, look, people, and I don't know this system or anything like that, but I'll just say from my experience with other systems that I've not dealt with, but seen and come across over the many years that I've been doing this, people will often try and differentiate themselves with a process or a aspect of their system design that they think gives them so much better results, and they think that is a requirement for the best coral growth or the best fish growth or the best water quality. But are they looking at all the aspects of their system? Are they looking at all of the aspects of the operational capacity of the filtration system? I don't think you can draw a correlation there. I definitely don't think that it's the most effective way that it could be removing fine particles. That's for sure. So basically it's a high volume power head with a floss canister to trap particulates. Why not just increase the flow in the tank, which you arguably want to do anyway with wave makers for the health of your coral, as well as to keep detritus in suspension, and then have it all collected in the sump where you can centralize this removal. Creating negative pressure. I'm not sure what you mean by creating negative pressure. It's old school. Yeah. What did you mean by creating negative pressure? is that supposed to have an effect on the removal rate? And what? Yeah, I'm not sure. Does anyone have any other questions that they wanted to ask? Yes, it will. Pump cavitation is no good. Don't want pump cavitation. I mean, look, let's look at it this way. In aquaculture systems that are feeding hundreds of kilos a day, that the only circulation within the system is the circulation that's supplied by the return pump that is going through the filtration system, that has centralized mechanical filtration and has ozone size to create a clear water system and all this kind of stuff. We achieve fine particulate removal adequate enough for the ongoing growth and health of those fish within that system with a much lower turnover rate, with much higher feed rates and much higher stocking densities, without the need to put in an internal pump with fine filter mat to strip out particulates, because we size, design and apply the correct size of filtration for the job at hand. And that's what this is all about. How's paternity leave? It's really good. Really good. Yeah. Yeah, it's really, really good. I'm loving it. Absolutely loving it. It's meant to be supplementary to absorb excess detritus in the sump. If there is excess detritus in the sump, I would make the argument that the other filtration is not sized adequately to perform the task it needs to. That would be my argument. Oh yeah, I tell you what, gas bubble disease will liven up anyone's day. Ask anyone that keeps anyone that you know, maintains zebrafish systems. Bruce and Jason will tell you all about that. It's a son of a bitch. TGP probes are not cheap either. Anyone else have any questions? Anything at all, I'm open to them. Yeah, especially considering the value of the fish and the research that you guys are, you know, dealing with. It's not understanding fluid dynamics can be the undoing of a lot of hard work. Nutrigrain, not yet, Bruce. If you're referring to Nutrigrain, how I think you're referring to Nutrigrain, not yet. Yeah, we both remember. I'm surprised we both remember because that was a big night. But yeah, not yet, not quite yet. Is there anything that anyone else would like to go over? The other thing is you know, what would you guys like to see next? Would you like to see UV? Would you like to see protein skimmers? Any other types of filtration that you think might need to be covered? I was going to cover ozone as well. I think people are pretty much asking for protein skimming info. So yeah, we'll I think that'll be the next thing that we go over. And skimmers. Oh dear. Yeah, I think I'll do skimmers, ozone, and UV separately. Um, as their own because they can take up um, you know, some amount of time. Disaster planning. Oh jeez. Well, yeah, we can do ozone and skimmers together. Yeah, definitely. Matt, have you gone carbon dosing? Yeah, look, I could do nutrient control. Running carbon, as in activated carbon? Matt, send me a PM, dude, and remind me, and I'll send you a link to my blog that goes over organic carbon dosing for nutrient control. Be warned, you may need 1 to 8 stubbies to get through it. Yeah, right, I'll do absorption loading monitoring in activated carbon. There is nothing that I am familiar with that is available, Bruce. If you're not running ozone and you are running carbon, the only indication that I would have would be, one is time, and secondly, coloration of the water. So if your tannins, so your tannin content or the browning of your water starts to increase, then it would be time to change your carbon. Or if you're running your carbon for any more than, I'm going to say 4 weeks, it's probably saturated. Yes, thank you. Please flick me a paper. Ignore the out of office reply, because that's obviously automatically generated. Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, I'll do protein skimming and ozone next, and we'll go from there. Alright, ladies and gentlemen, well, that's been nearly 2 hours and 30 minutes. I think I'm going to call it a night. This rain's making me sleepy, and I've had a big week. So, yeah, I think I just need to relax and, yeah. Power outage options. Backup generators, UPS, monitoring alert options. Look, yeah, that's okay, Bruce. Yeah, no dramas, mate. No problem. I still haven't heard from you in regards to the stuff that you wanted to talk about and go over for that write-up that you were doing. So, I mean, if yeah, at any point you need to call me, and I can call you back, or we can talk via email or whatever. There, happy to help out, Bruce. Power outage options. Look, it's not my forte. Monitoring alert options, yeah, heaps of monitoring options out there. I'm not an expert in all of them, but power, a good generator with a good automatic cut-in will save you 9.9 times out of 10. Yeah, all right, guys, no dramas. Have a good night, have a good weekend. Everyone stay safe. Yeah, sanitize your hands, look after your family, and we'll see you next time. Cheers.